I promise I'll spare you the hemp and the bioenergy talks. Yeah, so pleasure to be here. Privilege, really. Appreciated the invitation. Wasn't sure exactly what I needed relative to slides, and I'm going to just try to give you a whirlwind tour of a little bit of some of the stuff that we've done and seen, which may or may not all touch on what we're supposed to do relative to environment and economic impacts. So I got invited into silvopasture as a new faculty member when I arrived at Virginia Tech 20 plus years ago. And I thought, okay, sure, this is an opportunity for me to do some work, but this is stupid. But this is the first piece of the puzzle for me. I had a research project we were working on. We had two species, black walnut and honey locust, and they were planted at different densities and at different slope positions. And we looked at plant productivity underneath them. What's happening with the forage crop underneath. And in a very dry year and a very wet year, 2 years in a row, very different circumstances, we had about 15, 16% yield increase where you have a moderate tree density. Okay, everybody take a collective sigh. What is moderate tree density? Well, that's what we're all kind of searching for, and it's kind of a problem, right? How do you get there? So anyway, but that was enough to pique my curiosity and think these systems have a lot to offer. These are pictures not of the same site. I'll go back just for your reference again. These are 7 or 8 year old trees in this picture. And now these are 19-year-old trees. They were same kind of general location, different research study site. The left are honey locust trees. Those are grafted millwood trees. And on the right is black walnut. One of the things that was interesting when we started the work, we actually had better growth out of the honey locust trees. And what we're seeing with these trees, you can see the millwood honey locusts here are much smaller than these black walnut trees. Talking to somebody last night, the walnuts kind of, we've pruned them up. They kind of remind me of truffula trees if you are up on your Dr. Seuss. And so one of the things that happens is when you have those trees in those systems with different sizes, they have different shade effects, that sort of thing, we do see differences in plant productivity and in plant composition. So, yes, there are data out there that says that we can have better forages, and that may or may not be true, but not all the forages that we see in our black walnut systems are particularly desired. We see more annual grasses that are less desirable. We have some native warm season material that is not particularly palatable called nimblewill. And so, it's not necessarily heavily present, but it's there and something to contend with. And, one of the reasons why scientists work the way they do, we try to parse out things to, okay, what's the effect of this variable versus the effect of that variable? So that's why you have all black all black walnut and all honey locust. And, if I were designing systems, I'd be thinking more about integration. Can we do walnut and locust together where I've got a nitrogen fixer that's not got quite the canopy spread, say, that these black walnuts have? Lots of questions there. Now, I say we do have some reduction in forage yield, and these are summertime studies. That's another limit for the research that we have. These are summer studies, so we don't see what would happen on an annual basis. But, I got ahead of myself here. One of the things that I think from an impact that our work has done or has had is, I think there was interest in honey locusts when Mike Gold came to Virginia Tech for a sabbatical, and he was talking to people there, and my colleagues that drug me into this, they said, well, we'll plant honey locust and black walnut. And, but, there hadn't been any real data looking at nutritional characteristics of these materials. There's some old studies from the literature out of Auburn, I think in the early 40s, and they're not really well documented, really great research, that would suggest that there's high nutritional value. So we did some work that repeated that in a sense and gave it a more scientific underpinning. What you see is that these ground millwood seed pods have lower levels of NDF, so that's a positive. They're a little higher in lignin and a little lower in protein. But when you compare them, say, with whole dent corn or oat grain, they're comparable. So they look like they're, potentially very nice feed resource for the farm that you don't have to pay for. And so I think one of the impacts that some of our work has done, I mean, I've had people from Colorado to Wisconsin to New England to Georgia to South Africa asking me about these materials and what the potential is. Is that all good? I don't know. Actually, if somebody says we're going to plant thousands of acres in Mozambique, well, you know, Australia worked to get rid of these things. We're working with grafted material, so it's thornless, but it's carrying the thorn gene. So, you know, all of this at the end of the day, it comes back to management. Kudzu is a great forage. You walk away from kudzu, it's going to take over what you leave behind. And so, you know, we've got hundreds of examples of that. And I think honey locust is great. Austin thinks, I'm happy for him. He's spreading the word. I hope he's not spreading a problem. But he's not, as long as people will manage. And that's at the heart of these systems anyway, right? Sorry, I'm taking too much time here. So average daily gain. So we look at animal performance in these systems. This is a 3-year study. The walnut, we have to destock because of that lower forage production. And what that means is those animals have a little more opportunity. And then when you compare kind of just total gain across systems, we're seeing similar gains. And that's great. And we've also got a tree. So, you know, we are having a potential environmental impact relative to sequestering carbon, standing carbon. We're not even talking about the soil changes. Most producers don't care about any of that. They come to me and say, you know, look, I got issues with animals that are on toxic fescue, they're hot. They may be coming for other reasons. They may say, I want something different. They may say, I want opportunities for intergenerational land transfer, you know, why? And, but you know, we needed some data to back up what we say is possible with these systems relative to you know, providing benefit to animals. And so these are data that essentially show that those animals that are in open systems, look, they have a little bit of opportunity to utilize shade based on the way our systems are set up, but they don't get so much. And those that do, boy, they take advantage of it. And what you see then is those animals that are grazing in an open system, they spend much less time lying down and more time standing. Those are energetically expensive activities, right? And so we can see that in the temperature on these animals that are in the open systems during the day, they're hotter. One of the things that we can't really measure in a typical production study is animal stress. And so recently we did a little bit of work looking at cortisol levels. And you know, the people that come to us and say, we're interested in animal welfare, that's like the #1 concern among livestock producers. It's animal welfare. And so we've got data that says those animals that are in silvopastures, chronically lower levels of cortisol. Doesn't necessarily translate into higher productivity, but they're more comfortable. And, you know, people get that. And one of the silvopasture practitioners says, my clientele get it. He's direct marketing. People come in, oh, it's a lovely environment for your livestock. I want more of that. The customer gets it. And you sell that? Probably. Okay, we're stuck. Next slide, please. All right, there we go. So one of the other impacts so just a little bit of my history. I started out as the egghead in the ivory tower. I had a research and teaching appointment. I didn't get out in extension, and people didn't see me talk about this. And when they did, it was like, oh, he's that wacko from on campus. When I changed to extension, I had the opportunity to start contaminating people with these ideas. And one of the things that we're seeing is that technical service providers slowly are starting to pick up on these ideas. And so I use this example of a producer in Virginia who was interested in intergenerational land transfer, to developing silvopasture. And the forester that helped him initially was very skeptical, but through training, through some of our extension workshops, she got, I don't want to say she drank the Kool-Aid, but she became willing to work with these systems in a way that she would not have in the past. Clicking. I don't know what's happening here. There we go. Another impact that I think is good is as we work with these systems, going back to where Ashley is, how many people are working on corn and soybeans? Bazillion. We don't have a whole lot of scientists. I threw this picture in because some of you may know Gabe Pent, the guy in the dark blue. coat there. This is a picture from about 8 years ago on a producer farm. That's Buck Holsinger on the left in the orange. And so we are seeing new scientists. Next slide, please. And they're putting out compelling data. Next slide, please. That are showing the benefits of these systems relative to land equivalency ratio. And so, you know, that's encouraging. Next slide, please. And I guess this is kind of almost a segue to the next speaker. There's been an explosion of people that are interested in these systems, you know, for their environmental benefits, carbon project drawdown. The Edwards Mother Earth Foundation, a colleague of mine worked with them. It's a private family foundation, and they've put money into paying people to develop silvopastures. I don't rub elbows that much with Savannah Institute, but I do a fair amount with Trees for Grazers and now with Working Trees, another organization that is it's a startup at Stanford, and they want to pay people for carbon, and they've developed ability to make that happen at small scale. Next slide, please. Oh, yep, got ahead of myself. It actually worked. And we do see adoption in Virginia. It's much more towards thinning. But one of the nice things about that is these people say, look, I'm happy to show this off to anybody that wants to come take a look. And on the planting side, next slide, please. On the planting side, you know, I'd say, well, I'm not going to worry about this. Everybody knows how to plant a tree. But, you know, it's a trick. And so it's been really encouraging to see producers like Wynn Miller, who will speak later, you know, come up with new ways of integrating tree protection with fencing systems so that the systems themselves are more functional and flexible. Next slide, please. And that was the thank you. I had a couple of comments from an earlier session that I wanted to talk about. One of the things I think that is a challenge is we see a lot of worry about increases in labor. And that is a problem because more and more I talk to people who say, I can't find labor. I can't find people to do the work. And that's a challenge. So that may be a place for technology. But that may also help. Maybe we need to rethink what an economy looks like. Because I think if we can think about stacking enterprises, I'm happy to pay for that labor if it's going to accrue greater value to me. One of the things we're missing is good economic data on these systems over time. The other question, there was a question about scale. And I think it's kind of hard to change a traditional mindset. We see more producers that are, you know, 100 acres, 50 acres, 7 acres, whatever. They're smaller in scale. The folks that say, well, I've been here for 5 generations and we've been cutting trees the whole time, I'm sure as heck not going to start planting them. You know, culture and scale, I think, go hand in hand. Agriculture is a compound word, and I think changing mentality is harder than changing practices a lot of the time. I've got some other thoughts relative to federal policy and that sort of thing too, which I think also is another thing that we need to give some consideration to. But I'm going to stop there.